What's up, everybody? We're back. Corey Hughes, Bloody History. So, took the last couple days off. Just got finished moving and stuff and got unpacking it and settled in. Was a little bit of a bitch, so that's why I haven't done a show. But I have to announce to everybody today, starting today, I will be recording my first episode of my new show, which will be exclusively on Substack. It's going to be Bloody History World War II. Okay, it's going to be another daily just like this, except it will only be accessible through Substack. First episode I'm going to record when I get done with this. It will be up by this evening. Now, to sign up at Substack, to subscribe to my new show, which will be a daily, it's all going to be on all things World War II, Holocaust, Adolf Hitler, all my favorite things, right? So it is going to be $5 a month. So I can't risk having my other podcasts banned or pulled or anything like that. So that's why I'm doing it on Substack. And the amount of work I'm about to put into this, I can't do it for free. So it's going to be $5 a month. It's going to be the best $5 you could possibly spend. Besides getting all of these episodes, you will get access to my JFK research chat. The research chat really has got all kinds of stuff in it. It's not just JFK, but that's the foundation, because that's where the foundation of my work is. But, I mean, 500 to 600 people are going to listen to this episode of the podcast. I've only got about 75 people in my JFK research chat. So what's your problem, guys? You guys not interested? You do not want to interact with us? What's going on here? So when you sign up for my Substack, you will get access to that chat also. The link is in the introductory email on Telegram. So I highly advise you guys sign up for that. I'm going to be putting a lot of work into that, and it's going to be one of these shows that I'm going to reference periodically. So if you guys have any interest in World War II and what really happened and to debunk the bullshit of the Holocaust, it is definitely something you're going to want to tune into. It's going to be the single best $5 you can spend every month. So, but what we're going to do today is we're going to jump back to the book depository. We are going to talk about Roy Truly. I found a very in-depth file on Roy Truly. And so we're going to go through it. But of course, Roy Truly is the man who, along with Marion Baker, the Dallas police officer, allegedly encountered Oswald in the second floor lunchroom drinking a Coke, right? This story is complete bullshit. It never happened. There is no Oswald drinking a Coke in the second floor lunchroom. It's a fabricated story. And they fabricated the story because they needed to make up for the time lost, the 7 or 8 minutes that were lost in the book depository, when Baker was outside making an arrest of Emilio Santana next to the book depository on North Houston Street. So they had to adjust the timeline. They faked the whole timeline, right? Oswald was never in the second floor lunchroom drinking a Coke. The story never happened. The story didn't happen until at least 12:37 or 12:38. And when it did happen, it happened on the third or fourth floor in the stairwell. Okay, so we're going to cover that in this affidavit. But yeah, most of what you know about the Kennedy assassination is pure myth. And so the purpose of this show is to debunk it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to kick off with a statement from the FBI dated November 23rd, 1963. Roy S. Truly, warehouse manager, Texas School Book Depository, advised that the Texas School Book Depository had occupied the building at 411 Elm Street for only a few months. Prior to this time, the building was occupied by a wholesale grocery company engaged in supplying restaurants and institutions, and during the course of their occupancy, the floors of the building became oil-soaked, and this oil was found to be damaging the stock of the School Book Depository stacked thereon. In view of this, they had instituted a process of covering the floors with sheets of plywood. This process was being performed by the regular warehouse employees whenever they had slack periods of work. The southwest corner of the 6th floor had been cleared of stock in order that plywood could be laid over this floor, and the southwestern corner was subsequently empty of stock on November 22nd, 1963, making the windows to the southwest corner of the building readily accessible. Mr. Roy S. Truly, warehouse superintendent, Texas School Book Depository Building, Elm and Houston Streets, Dallas, furnished the following information. Lee Harvey Oswald is an employee of that company and has been so employed for approximately 2 months as an order filler, and in the course of his occupation has access to the 7 floors of the Texas School Book Depository Building. He's never seen Oswald with a gun or rifle of any kind. On November 22, 1963, Oswald appeared for work as usual on the morning of this date and went about his occupation of filling orders for school books. a few minutes after 12 noon. He, Truly, and most of the other employees of the Texas School Book Depository and the other concerns having offices in this building went out on the street or sidewalk in front of the building in order to watch the president's procession pass in front of the building. Shortly after 12:30 p.m., as the president's procession did pass in front of the building, he heard what he believes to be 3 shots. He was unable to place exactly the source of these 3 shots, but he believed they came from the area of the railroad yards adjoining the depository building. He then noticed a Dallas City police officer wearing a motorcycle helmet and boots running towards the entrance of the depository building, and he accompanied the officer into the front of the building. They saw no one there, and he accompanied the officer immediately up the stairs to the second floor of the building, where the officer noticed a door and stepped through the door, gun in hand, and observed Oswald in a snack bar there, apparently alone. This snack bar has no windows or doors facing the outside of the building, but is located almost in the center of the building. The officer pointed to Oswald and asked if Oswald was an employee of the company, and he Truly assured the officer that Oswald was an employee. He and the officer then proceeded onto the roof of the building, where the officer conducted a thorough search but found nothing. That's unusual because it was later admitted that a Mauser 7.65 was located on the roof. Then they searched the 7th floor of the building. By this time, many officers were swarming through the building, and he returned to the 1st floor of the building. The time that he and the officer saw Oswald in the snack bar could not have been more than 2 or 3 minutes after the shooting of President Kennedy, and they saw no one else in the building at that time. He has not seen Oswald since that time, and shortly after, he Truly had returned to the 1st floor of the building. He, at the request of the other Dallas police officers, started checking on the company employees and found all of them to be present except for Oswald, who could not be located. That's a straight up lie. There's at least 6 or 7 employees who weren't there. Mr. Truly advised that it was possible Oswald did see him with a rifle in his hands in the past few days, as a Mr. Warren Castor, employed by the Southwestern Publishing Company, which company has an office in the same building, had come to his office with 2 rifles, one a .22 rifle, which Castor said he had purchased for his son, and the other larger, more high-powered rifle, which Castor said he had purchased with which to go deer hunting if he got a chance. He Truly examined the high-powered rifle and raised it to his shoulder and sighted over it, then returned it to Castor, and Castor left with both rifles. Mr. Truly stated that he does not own a rifle and has had no other rifle in his hands or in his possession in a long period of time. Mr. Truly stated that Oswald had been riding to and from work with Mr. Wesley Frazier, who resides in Irving, at an unknown address to him, but whose telephone number is BL 3-8965. Mr. Truly stated that he would estimate there are approximately 65 people legitimately employed in the book depository building by the various companies operating there. All right, so next statement. Federal FBI again. Roy Truly, 4932 Jade Drive, Dallas, Texas, Superintendent. Texas School Book Depository, 411 Elm Street, Dallas, was interviewed in the presence of J.R. LaBelle, Detective, Homicide Bureau, Dallas Police Department, probably Lavelle, at which time he furnished the following information. He was working in the capacity of superintendent of the above agency on Friday, November 22nd, 1963. About 19 employees work in the plant itself in the shipping and order departments under his supervision. Lee Harvey Oswald was one of these individuals. Truly felt quite sure he and Oswald at work during the morning hours. He was confident he saw Oswald at work during the morning hours, November 22nd, 63. Truly originally hired Oswald as a temporary employee, and although the busy season for this business was just past, he had not been contemplating any layoff of Oswald at this time. He works a lot of extra employees during the summer and early fall each year, and Oswald was one of these extras. On November 22nd, 1963, he and the company of Mr. O.V. Campbell, one of the vice presidents of the Texas School Book Depository, O.V. Campbell is one of the co-owners also, started to lunch from their place of business at 411 Elm a few minutes past noon. They noticed a parade had started wherein President John Kennedy was scheduled to go ride, and they stopped to watch it. He saw the president go by, and at about that time he heard 3 explosions. The crowd of people in the area began to surge back towards the building at 411 Elm Street, and he realized that what he had heard must have been shots. He moved towards the building and thought at first that the shots came from behind the building. He saw a police officer in uniform approaching the building and realized he probably knew nothing of the building and therefore Truly ran into the building with him. They stopped at the freight elevators and observed that these elevators were not on the first floor. They ran up the stairway after he showed the officer where the stairway was. As they reached the second floor landing, the officer opened a door to a small lunchroom next to the business office on that floor and stuck his gun in the door. Lee Oswald was in the lunchroom. The officer asked him if he was an employee, to which Oswald replied he was. Truly and the officer gave this no further consideration inasmuch as Oswald was an employee, and they ran up to the 5th floor of the building. Truly saw an elevator, and he saw that the officer had jumped onto the elevator and rode to the 7th floor. They then proceeded up a short stairway and out onto the roof of the building. They then searched the roof area thoroughly and found no one. They stood a moment looking down on the crowd below in the vicinity of the building and also looked out over the railroad tracks that passed nearby. When Truly and the officer came back down to the lower floors of the building, other officers were looking around on the floors below. He recalled one officer on the 4th floor and possibly an officer on the 5th floor. By that time, there were a lot of people inside the building milling around. Probably some of them were not employees who worked in the building. Mrs. Reed, or R-E-E-D or R-E-A-D, an employee working under Truly, advised Truly that Oswald had come through an office area where she was with a Coke or Dr. Pepper in his hand. She said she remarked to him, Oswald, something to the effect that it was an awful thing that had happened out there, referring to the incident on the street outside the building. And Oswald mumbled something in reply. Truly tried to account for the employees under his supervision about 15 minutes after this, and Oswald was missing. He advised Chief Lumpkin and shortly thereafter Captain Fritz, both of the Dallas Police Department. He did not see Oswald anymore after that until the time of this interview. Truly had no information of any affiliation of organization. Hold on a second. I got to back up here. So we got to find this Mrs. Reed. Mrs. Reed, R-E-E-D or R-E-A-D, is an employee working under Truly, and she advised Truly that Oswald had come through an office where she was with a Coke or it must be he. He was with a Coke or Dr. Pepper in his hand. She said she remarked to him, Oswald, something to the effect that it was an awful thing that had happened. Okay, so we have this woman, Mrs. Reed, who I've never fucking heard of. Let's see if we can't pull the information on Mrs. Reed, guys, in the chat. We're going to need her information to verify her statements about Oswald. Because remember, Oswald was not seen in the lunchroom. He was not seen on the 2nd floor. He was not seen with a Coke in his hands. And we'll get to the statements of Marion Baker here shortly. Truly had no information of any affiliation with organizations on the part of Oswald. He stated that initially he first heard of Oswald on about October 14th, 1963, when a lady from Irving, Texas, whose name he cannot recall, telephonically advised him that her neighbor's brother was working for Truly. And he had stated that Truly's agency needed some more help, that Lee Oswald might be suitable for such employment, and that he has a baby and his wife expected another. Truly believed this neighbor's brother was possibly Wesley Frazier, an employee at the book depository, and Truly talked to him. He saw nothing objectionable about him and told him that he had some extra work to be performed. Truly does not run a thorough check on temporary employees, but has them fill out an application for him. In this form, Oswald listed 3 or 3.5 years in the U.S. Marines with an honorable discharge. Truly felt that if Oswald was in the U.S. Marines for that long, and was not long out of the service, this was a good man for a recommendation. The problem here is that Truly just said that he hired people over the summer temporarily, but he didn't hire Oswald in the summer. He hired Oswald October 15th, allegedly. But remember, my thesis is that Oswald never stepped foot in this fucking building. All right, so next one up. Mr. Roy Truly, warehouse superintendent, Texas School Book Depository, 411 Elm Street, Dallas, advised after observing an employment application filled out by Lee Harvey Oswald, which application was dated October 15, 63, advised that Oswald was employed the following day, and to the best of his recollection, Oswald has not missed a day's work since that time. Lee Harvey Oswald, okay, next document. Lee Harvey Oswald, 1026 North Beckley, Dallas, Texas, was interviewed by Captain Will Fritz of the Homicide Bureau, Dallas Police Department. Special agents James P. Hosty Jr. and James W. Bookout were present during this interview. When the agents entered the interview room at 3:15 p.m., Captain Fritz had been previously interviewing Lee Harvey Oswald for an undetermined period of time. Both agents identified themselves to Oswald and advised him they were law enforcement officers and anything he said could be used against him. Oswald, at this time, adopted a violent attitude towards the FBI and both agents and made many uncomplimentary remarks about the FBI. Oswald requested Captain Fritz remove the cuffs from him, and it being noted that Oswald was handcuffed with his hands behind him, Captain Fritz had one of his detectives remove the handcuffs and handcuff Oswald with his hands in front of him. Remember, this is all suspect. We don't know that any of this actually fucking happened. We can't believe a single word of any of the people who allegedly interviewed Oswald because they're fucking liars. So anything that anyone ever says that Oswald said, you just have to throw out the fucking window. Period. Captain Fritz asked Oswald if he ever owned a rifle, and Oswald stated that he had observed Mr. Truly, a supervisor at the Texas School Book Depository, on November 20th, 1963, display a rifle to some individuals in his office on the first floor of the Texas School Book Depository, but denied ever owning a rifle himself. Oswald stated that he had never been in Mexico except to Tijuana on one occasion. However, he admitted to Captain Fritz to having resided in the Soviet Union for 3 years, where he has many friends and relatives of his wife. Oswald also admitted that he was the secretary for the Fair Play for Cuba Committee in New Orleans, Louisiana, a few months ago. Oswald stated the Fair Play for Cuba Committee has its headquarters in New York City. Oswald admitted to having received an award for marksmanship while a member of the U.S. Marine Corps. You see what they're doing here? This is all bullshit. He never said any of this, okay? He admitted to having a marksmanship award. Give me a fucking break. This is all lies. He further admitted that he was living at 1026 North Beckley, which is complete bullshit because he was not living there because Kerry Thornley was living there. So this is all made up. This whole statement by Bookout and Hosty is completely fucking fabricated. He further admitted that he was living at 1026 North Beckley in Dallas, Texas under the name of O.H. Lee. Bullshit. We've already determined that the O.H. Lee came from Herbert Leon Lee. Remember, it has nothing to do with Oswald. He never stayed there. This is complete fiction. Oswald admitted that he was present in the Texas School Book Depository on November 22nd, 63, where he has been employed since October 15th, 63. Oswald stated that as a laborer, he has access to the entire building, which has offices on the first and second floor, and storage on the third and fourth floor, as well as the fifth and sixth floors. Oswald stated that he went to lunch at approximately noon, and he claimed he ate his lunch on the first floor in the lunchroom. However, when he went to the second floor where the Coca-Cola machine was located and obtained a bottle of Coca-Cola for his lunch, Oswald claimed to be on the first floor when President John Kennedy passed the building. After hearing what had happened, he said that because of all the confusion, there would be no work performed that afternoon, so he decided to go home. Oswald stated that when he went home by bus and changed his clothes and went to a movie. Oswald admitted to carrying a pistol with him to this movie, stating that he did this because he felt like it, giving no other reason. Oswald further admitted attempting to fight the Dallas police officers who arrested him in this movie theater when he received a cut and a bump. Oswald frantically denied shooting Dallas police officer Tippit or shooting President John F. Kennedy. The interview was concluded at 4:05 p.m. when Oswald was removed for a lineup. Okay, remember, this statement is purely fabricated. So much of this information that's provided by Bookout and Hosty is completely contradicted by what we can absolutely prove through Oswald's timeline. Let me see. We're going to continue to talk about the coke because I want to get to the statements of Baker real quick. So we've already acknowledged the fact that that Truly stated that he saw Baker going to the front of the book depository and going in the door, so we went in to help him, which is total bullshit because when you look at the, I believe it's a Malcolm Couch film, you can clearly see that Officer Baker runs past the book depository and goes to Houston Street. Right? Then a couple minutes later, you have the Willis 10 photo where it shows somebody's being arrested in front of the book depository. Right? None of this is mentioned by any of these fucking people, right? They're all liars. So this is what happened, and this is why I determined that they didn't enter the book depository till at least 12:37 as per the statements of Robert McNeil, right? Those we'll get to one day. Lee Harvey Oswald, interviewed in the offices of the Dallas Police Department, was advised he did not have to make any statement. Any statement he made could be used against him in court, and of his right to an attorney, he was requested to furnish descriptive and biographical data concerning himself. The following was obtained from his responses and examination of contents of his wallet. Oswald declined to explain his possession of a photograph of Selected Service card in the name of Alec James Heidel, When interview has been substantially completed and Oswald was asked to his present employment, he stated he thought perhaps interview to obtain descriptive information was too prolonged, that he had declined to be interviewed by any other officers previously and did not desire to be interviewed by this agent. He remarked, "I know your tactics. There is a similar agency in Russia. You're using the soft touch, of course. The procedure in Russia would be quite different." This is all nonsense. They're making this stuff up. Oswald was advised questions were intended to obtain his complete physical description and background. Upon repetition of the question as to his present employment, he furnished the same without further discussion. Okay, so let me just hop really quickly. I'll read some of this biographical stuff, but I want to get to the Marion Baker stuff because it blatantly contradicts Truly and what we can state about Robert McNeil's witness statement that day. So this is Marion Baker's statement. "Tell me where you find the difference, okay?" Remember, he's supposed to have gone in and gone to the second floor and busted Oswald in the second floor lunchroom with a Coke. Okay, so here we go. This is Officer Marion Baker, and this is a transcript of his handwritten statement, which I'll show you here in a minute. Friday, November 22nd, 1963, I was riding motorcycle escort for the President of the United States. At approximately 12:30 p.m., I was on Houston Street, and the President's car had made a left turn from Houston onto Elm Street. Just as I approached Elm and Houston, I heard 3 shots. I realized these shots were rifle shots, and I began to try to figure out where they came from. I decided the shots had come from the building on the northwest corner of Elm and Houston. This building is used by the Board of Education for book storage. I jumped off my motor and ran inside the building. As I entered the door, I saw several people standing around. I asked these people where the stairs were. A man stepped forward and stated that he was the building manager and that he would show me where the stairs were. I followed the man to the rear of the building, and he said, "Let's take the elevator." The elevator was hung several floors up, so we used the stairs instead. As we reached the 3rd or 4th floor, I saw a man walking away from the stairway. I called to the man, and he turned around and came back toward me. The manager said, "I know that man. He works here." I then turned the man loose, and we went up to the top floor. The man I saw was a white man, approximately 30, about 5'9", 165, dark hair, wearing a light brown jacket. Okay, note here, he's on the 3rd or 4th floor, and he's wearing a light brown jacket. All right, this is William Seymour. This is not Oswald. And this is fucking Baker's statement. Okay, Baker did not do anything in the second floor lunchroom with a Coke. It is complete fiction. This statement will then be later written about in a report by Jesse Curry about Baker's activities that day. Okay, so Baker never went to the fucking second floor lunchroom with a Coke. The entire second floor lunchroom with a Coke story is nonsense. Pure nonsense. All right, so now let's get back to Roy Truly. This is Roy Truly's statement, and it's got a bunch of stuff on Oswald here. Let me read some of this Oswald descriptors. It says here, Oswald was advised questions and were intended to obtain his complete physical descriptions. So, according to them, Oswald's 5'9" and 140 pounds. Medium brown hair, worn at medium length, needs a haircut. His eyes are blue-gray. No tattoos or permanent scars. Which is weird because you should have scars where he tried to kill himself, right? In Russia. Relatives, father, Robert Lee Oswald, deceased August 31st, 39, New Orleans, Louisiana. Wife, Marina, 2 infant children. Brothers, John Oswald. It's actually John Pick. Address unknown. He's in New York. Last known at Fort Worth, Texas, 5 or 6 years ago, age about 30. Works with pharmaceuticals, but not graduate pharmacist. Robert Oswald, 7313 Davenport, Fort Worth. Wife is Vada, and they have 2 small children. Works for a brick company believed to be Acme. Dress at the time of interview: black trousers, brown salt and pepper long-sleeved shirt, and bareheaded. Contents of wallet: had card in possession, Lee Harvey Oswald, social security number 433543937. Photo of Selective Service System card with photo of Oswald, notice of classification and name Alec James Heidel, SSN 42224395321. Yeah, that's bullshit. That was planted. Card shows classification 4, bears date February 5th, 1962. Reverse side shows card from Texas local board, 400 West Vickery, Fort Worth, Texas. Okay, so here's another thing. The selective service card that everyone talks about is a complete fake. And here's more proof of that it's a complete fake. The selective service card, that's something that you get before you go into the Marines that shows your eligibility that they would use for a draft, right? So this card in particular is dated in February 5th of 62, but he's cut from the Marines in June of 62, and it was obvious he was there from 59 all the way onward. February 5th of 62. Wait a minute. February 5th of 1962, Oswald is still in the Soviet Union. How did he get a selective service card at a time when he's still in the fucking Soviet Union? That's super important, okay? Selective service card is complete bullshit. The Alec J. Heidel signature was determined to match Marina's handwriting. There's photographs of it. You can go look at it. This was obviously planted by Westbrook at the Tippit shooting and was put into his property later. Okay, it says here, local board 114, Fort Worth, Lee Harvey Oswald, social security number, address in Fort Worth on 5th Street. That's the Paynes, because that's where he was living. That's where he was living. He was living at... See, none of this makes any sense. He was living at the Paynes, right? He wasn't living at the boarding houses, so the 5th Street address was the address he used for everything. But yeah, none of this makes any sense here because of the dates and times. So anybody wants to go and dig into the selective service card, you'll find that the dates on it are all wrong. It was issued while he was in the Soviet Union. Yeah, none of it makes any fucking sense whatsoever. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and screenshot this, drop it in my research chat because it seems to be pretty fucking relevant. All right, he then had a snapshot photo of a woman, apparently his wife, snapshot photo of infant, white card with longhand, Embassy USSR, Decatur Street, had the consular Rezieko. This is all handwritten stuff in his notes. He had a Dallas Public Library card, undated, expiring December 7th, 65, issued to Lee Harvey Oswald on 602 Elspeth. 602 Elspeth. Remember, he didn't really actually stay there, right? Or he did stay there, but he never actually moved. He was going to move in there, but never did. So that's an interesting twist to this. Department of Defense identification number N4271617 issued to Lee Harvey Oswald. Expiration date December 7th, 62. Private first class E2. Service number blah blah blah. Card shows date of October 18th, 39. Birth date. And he's 5'11", right? Is he 5'11"? Absolutely not. This guy's 5'9". 145 pounds, brown hair, gray eyes. Dallas Public Library card, undated. Says business Jaggers Charles Scoval. Followed by the name Jack L. Bowen, 1916 Stevens Forest Drive. U.S. Forces Japan identification card issued to Lee Harvey Oswald. Private service number 1653230. Organization Marine Air Control Squadron 1 and MAG 11. Identification card 00646 issued May 8th, 58. Date of birth October 18th, 39. So you don't ever hear about this stuff. This stuff is all in Oswald's wallet at the time that he was arrested. Certificate of service in the Armed Forces of the United States. Issued to Lee Harvey Oswald. Reflected honorable. Served on active duty. U.S. Marine Corps. October 24th to September 11th, 59. Hang on a second. Certificate of Service in Armed Forces of United States issued to Lee Harvey Oswald. Reflected honorably. Served on active duty. U.S. Marine Corps. October 24th of 1956 to September 11th of 1959. And then it was in 1959 that he went to the Soviet Union. Okay, got that. That's correct. He also had a card of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, 799 Broadway, in his wallet. Filed by V.T. Lee as executive secretary. It's Vincent T. Lee. Card of Fair Play for Cuba Committee New Orleans chapter issued to Lee Harvey Oswald, June 15th, 1963. Filed by A.T. Heidel, chapter president. Note name Heidel on fictitious selective service card. Okay, yeah, this is more planted stuff. Like, Oswald never had anything to do with this stuff. Selective Service notice of classification card to Lee Harvey Oswald. Selective Service number 41-114-39-532. 4-A dated February 2nd, 1960 from a local board, Fort Worth, Texas. Okay. Selective Service notice of classification card to Lee Harvey Oswald. Selective Service number 41-114-39-532. 4-A dated February 2nd, 1960. Where the fuck was Oswald February 2nd of 1960? He was in the Soviet Union. So how is it even possible that this date is associated with a Selective Service notification? All right. Residences, 2515 West 5th Street, Irving, Texas. And then it says here, rooming house, 1026 North Beckley, for about 5 weeks. Phone number unknown. Yeah, that's completely false. He never stayed there. Previous residences, 4706 Magazine Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. 602 Elspeth. He was there about 7 months. See, I don't believe that. I don't think he ever stayed at the Elspeth address. Hey, guys, if you can pull the information on the 602 Elspeth address, I'd appreciate it. Unrecalled Street in Fort Worth, Texas, a few months. With brother in Fort Worth, Texas for a few months. And then previously in the Soviet Union till July of 62. That's false. He was there till June of 62, not July. Occupations, photography, Jagger Charles Stovall, 522 Browder, Dallas, Texas. Factory worker at the Riley Coffee Company in New Orleans. And he was unemployed for several months. And then he was employed with the Texas School Book Depository, filling orders, etc. All right. So now we have a FBI report dated 11/25/63. Lee Harvey Oswald was interviewed in the Homicide and Robbery Unit, Dallas Police Department. Captain J.W. Fritz, in the presence of Special Agent James Bookout. That's Bookhout, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Oswald was advised of the identity and official capacity of said agent, and the fact that he did not have to make any statement, and the statements that he could make could be used against him in a court of law. It's funny, they're reading him Miranda rights, but if I'm not mistaken, Miranda didn't happen until 68. So, Oswald stated that he did not own any rifle. He advised that he saw a rifle the day before yesterday at the Texas School Book Depository when Mr. Truly and two other gentlemen had it in their possession and were looking at it. Oswald stated on November 22nd, 63, at the time of the search of the Texas School Book Depository building by Dallas police officers, he was on the second floor of said building, having just purchased a Coca-Cola from the soft drink machine, at which time a police officer came into the room with pistol drawn and asked him if he worked there. Mr. Truly was present and verified that he was an employee, and that the police officer thereafter left the room and continued through the building. Oswald stated that he took this Coke down to the first floor and stood around and had lunch in the employees' lunchroom. He thereafter went outside and stood around for 5 or 10 minutes with foreman Bill Shelley, and thereafter went home. He stated that he left work because, in his opinion, based on the remarks of Bill Shelley, he did not believe that there was going to be any more work that day due to the confusion in the building. He stated after arriving at his residence, he then went to a movie where he was subsequently apprehended by the Dallas Police Department. That's complete fiction. They're still making all this up because Oswald, they can't prove, said any of this. Oswald stated that his hours of work at Texas School Book Depository are from 8 a.m. to 4:45 p.m., but that he's not required to punch a time clock. Oh, really? He's not required to punch a time clock, but why are the records of the Texas School Book Depository showing that he had a perfect attendance record? They also show that fucking Frankie Kaiser had a perfect attendance record and was there on the day of the 22nd, but we know for a fact that's not true. See, all the records in the book depository are suspect. His usual place of work in the building is on the first floor. However, he frequently is required to go to the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th floors of the building in order to get books. Well, that's not possible because the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors are occupied by publishing companies, okay? Not the Texas School Book Depository. Southwest, Macmillan, these companies. These are the companies that were occupying the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors, okay? The Texas School Book Depository had the 1st, maybe they had the 2nd, but that's irrelevant here. And the 5th and the 6th and the 7th, but not the 4th or the 3rd. So I don't understand why you would say that. He says this is true November 22nd, 63, and he'd be on all floors in the performance of his duties on that day. Another statement. Lee Harvey Oswald was interviewed by Captain J.W. Fritz, Homicide and Robbery Bureau, Dallas Police Department. Oswald was advised of the identity of S.A. James Bookout and his capacity as a special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He was informed of his right to an attorney and that any statement he made could be used against him in a court of law, and that any statement which he might make must be free and voluntary. He furnished the following information in the presence of T.J. Kelly, U.S. Secret Service. Never heard that name before. T.J. Kelly. David B. Grant, Secret Service. Robert I. Nash, United States Marshal. And Detectives Billy L. Senkel and Faye M. Turner of the Homicide and Robbery Bureau, Dallas, Texas Police Department. Yep, that's a bunch of names I never heard before. These are some pretty interesting names here. I didn't know that there were any marshals involved. Robert I. Nash of the Marshals. There's a lot of pictures back at the book deposit, not the book deposit, but the Dallas Police Department that have gone unidentified, right? It's probably some of these people. Following his departure from the Texas School Book Depository, he boarded a city bus to his residence and obtained a transfer upon departure from the bus. He stated that officers at the time of arresting him took his transfer out of his pocket. See, they're making all this up because allegedly Oswald got in a cab, right? Right? He doesn't seem to mention that. Oswald advised that he had only one post office box, which was at Dallas, Texas. He denied bringing any package to work that morning on November 22nd. He stated that he was not in the process of fixing up his apartment, and he denied telling Wesley Frazier that the purpose of his visit to Irving, Texas, the night of the November 21st, was to obtain curtain rods from Mrs. Ruth Payne. Oswald stated that it was not exactly true, as recently stated by him that he rode a bus from his place of employment to his residence on November 22nd, 1963. He stated actually that he did board a city bus at his place of employment, but after about a block or two, due to traffic congestion, he left the bus and rode a city cab to his apartment on North Beckley. He recalled that at the time of getting into the cab, some lady looked in and asked to have the driver call her a cab. He stated that he might have made some remark to the cab driver merely for the purpose of passing the time that day. He recalled that his fare was approximately 85 cents. He stated that after arriving at his apartment, he changed his shirt and trousers because they were dirty. He described his dirty clothes as being a reddish color, long-sleeve shirt with a button-down collar and gray-colored trousers. He indicated that he had placed these articles of clothing in the lower drawer of his dresser. Okay, so this is complete bullshit, all right? So, how do we know this is complete bullshit? Because the statements of Earlene Roberts said that he was there just long enough to walk into his room, grab and put on his jacket, and walk out. He was not there long enough to change his fucking clothes. So Bookout is this a statement by Bookout or Hosty? Either one of them, Bookout and Hosty, are fucking liars, completely complicit in the cover-up. Oswald stated on November 22nd he had eaten lunch in the lunchroom at the Texas School Book Depository alone, but recalled possibly two Negro employees walking through the room during this period. He stated possibly one of these employees was called Junior, and the other was a short individual whose name he could not recall, but whom would be able to recognize. He stated that his lunch had consisted of a cheese sandwich and an apple, which he had obtained at Mrs. Ruth Payne's residence in Irving, Texas, upon his leaving for work that morning. Okay, so that's bullshit because, what's his name? Bonnie Ray Williams said that Oswald told him he was going to get his lunch from the vending machine. Okay, Oswald wasn't there that fucking day. William Seymour was. Oswald stated that Mrs. Payne receives no pay for keeping his wife and children at her residence. He stated that their presence in Mrs. Payne's residence is a good arrangement for her because of her language interest, indicating that his wife speaks Russian and Mrs. Payne is interested in the Russian language. Oswald denied having kept a rifle in Mrs. Payne's garage at Irving, Texas, but stated that he did have certain articles stored in her garage consisting of 2 sea bags, a couple of suitcases, and several boxes of kitchen articles, and also kept his clothes at Mrs. Payne's residence. He stated that all of the articles in Mrs. Payne's garage had been brought there about September 1963 from New Orleans, Louisiana. Oswald stated that he has had no visitors at his apartment on North Beckley. Oswald stated that he has no receipts for purchases of any guns and has never ordered any guns and does not own a rifle, nor has he ever possessed a rifle. Oswald denied that he's a member of the Communist Party. Oswald stated that he purchased a pistol, which was taken off him by police officers November 22nd, 1963, about 6 months ago. He declined to state where he had purchased it. Remember, the the handgun, the revolver that came in was a Smith & Wesson 32, and it was signed off by someone named Paxton, who picked it up from the Seaport Traders, not from the post office. So, once again, they're mixing up details here. Oswald stated he arrived about July 1962 from the USSR. That's false. It was June of 62. And he was interviewed by the FBI at Fort Worth, Texas. He stated that he felt they overstepped their bounds and had used various tactics in interviewing him. He further complained that on interview of Ruth Payne by the FBI regarding his wife, that he felt that his wife was intimidated. Oswald stated that he desired to contact attorney Abt in New York City, indicating that Abt was the attorney who defended the Smith Act case in 1949 and 50. He stated he does not know attorney Abt personally, and that Captain Friss advised Oswald the arrangements would be immediately made whereby he could call attorney Abt. Oswald stated that prior to coming to Dallas from New Orleans, he had resided at a furnished apartment at 4706 Magazine Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. While in New Orleans, he had been employed by William B. Riley Company, 640 Magazine Street, New Orleans. Oswald stated that he has nothing against President John F. Kennedy personally. However, in view of the present charges against him, he did not desire to discuss this phase further. Oswald stated that he would not agree to take a polygraph examination without the advice of counsel. He added that in the past he's refused to take polygraph examinations. Oswald stated that he is a member of the American Civil Liberties Union, and added that Mrs. Ruth Payne was also a member of the same. With regard to the Selective Service card in the possession of Oswald, bearing photograph of Oswald in the name of Alec James Heidel, Oswald admitted that he carried this Selective Service card, but declined to state that he wrote the signature of Alec J. Heidel appearing on the same. He further declined to state the purpose of carrying the same or any use he has made of same. Okay, this is all BS, and why? Because we know the card, Selective Service card, was not carried by Oswald. It was planted at the Tippit shooting by Captain Westbrook. Oswald stated that an address book in his possession contains the name of various Russian immigrants residing in Dallas, Texas, whom he had visited with. Oswald denied shooting President John F. Kennedy on November 22, 1963, and added that he did not know that Governor John Connally had been shot and denied any knowledge concerning this incident. Who was that by? It doesn't say who that was by. Let me see if I can find a header. That was continued. That was again by Bookout. No. That was the interview on the 20th. No, I don't know. Maybe it was from Bookout. It doesn't say here. The report seems to come to an end and it just is blank at the bottom. All right, so we have another one. Is this one from? This one seems to be also by Bookout. Lee Harvey Oswald was interviewed at the Homicide and Robbery Bureau, Dallas Police Department at 6:35 p.m. by Captain J.W. Fritz in the presence of Special Agent James W. Bookout, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Oswald was advised of the identity and official capacity of said agent and the fact that he did not have to make any statement, that any statement he did could be used against him, blah, blah, blah. All right, so Captain J.W. Fritz exhibited to Lee Harvey Oswald a photograph which had been obtained by the Dallas Police Department in a search warrant of the garage at the residence of Mrs. Ruth Payne, located at Irving, Texas, which photograph reflects Oswald holding a rifle and wearing a holstered pistol. Oswald was asked if this photograph of himself. Oswald stated that he would not discuss the photograph without the advice of an attorney. He stated that the head of the individual in the photograph could be his, but that it was entirely possible that the police department had superimposed this part of the photograph over the body of someone else. He pointed out that numerous news media had snapped his photograph during the day, and the possibility existed that the police had doctored up this photograph. Oswald denied that he has purchased any rifle from Klein's store in Chicago, Illinois. Oswald complained of a lineup wherein he was not granted a request to put on a jacket similar to those worn by some of the other individuals in the lineup. Mr. Warren Castor, manager, Southwestern Publishing Company, 7th floor, 411 Elm Street, Dallas, residence 3338 Merrill, Dallas, informed that he was not in Dallas, Texas on November 22nd, 63, and that he does not know Lee Harvey Oswald. Mr. Castor related that on Wednesday, November 20th, 63, he purchased a .30-06 rifle and a .22 rifle at Sanger's in Dallas. Subsequent to the purchase of the rifles above, he took them to the Texas School Book Depository, 411 Elm Street, and exhibited the two rifles to Mr. Roy Truly. Warehouse Superintendent, Texas School Book Depository, and stated that he had intended to hide the 2 rifles in his office because he was going to give the .22 rifle to his son for Christmas. On second thought, he was afraid that the guns might be stolen, so he took them to his home on November 20th, 63. He stated that he has never seen anyone with a gun at the Texas School Book Depository other than the above related incident. That's from Mr. Warren Castor. Okay, here's another one. It says here, dated November 24th, 63. Pauline E. Sanders, 4226 Delmar, a clerk, Texas School Book Depository, 411 Elm Street, advised. She arrived at work at 8:45 a.m. on November 22nd, 1963, and immediately reported to the main office where she was employed. She said she was acquainted with Lee Harvey Oswald, who worked in the warehouse section, and she has seen him 3 or 4 times during lunch breaks in the lunchroom, but did not talk to him on any occasion. She said he was very quiet, and that she had never seen him talking to any of the other employees that she could recall. She said she would not be in a position to observe what time he had arrived at work or the way he arrived. She said on the morning of November 22nd, 1963, she went outside to watch the presidential parade until about 11:25 a.m. She said she did not see Oswald during this time, and she stood in the last line of spectators nearest the door to the Texas School Book Depository building. She advised she could not recall the exact time, but immediately after presidential parade passed, she heard 3 loud blasts, and she immediately realized that the shots or whatever it was, came from the building above her. She said within a matter of 10 seconds, a uniformed police officer in a white helmet ran into the building, but she did not observe him in any further and could not state where he went in the building. Mrs. Sanders advised that Mr. Campbell, office manager, arrived shortly after, and the police officer entered the building, and she told him she believed the blast came from the upper part of the building. However, she insisted the shots came from the embankment. She advised she did not pursue the matter any further, and she entered the building within 5 minutes of the blast. She said she did not observe Oswald in the lobby, but the lobby was crowded with people at this time. She said she did notice a uniformed police officer talking to an individual dressed in gray clothing with a silver-type construction helmet, and he claimed to be an engineer. She said he definitely did not work in the building, and she had never seen him before. She said the police officer appeared to be taking his name and address. She said she did not observe whether the elevator was in use or not, and she could not recall whether it was on the first floor, but she did use the stairwell to walk to the second floor, where their offices are maintained. She said she could not recall seeing Oswald the entire day, and this time, the only thing that was on their minds was whether the president had died. And this is written by Special Agents Robert Besham and Robert J. Anderson, and it was dictated on the 24th of 63. See, these are names that don't pop up in the assassination story very often, huh? The thing I have to disagree with here is the claim that a uniformed police officer ran in the building 30 seconds after. I mean, and we've already determined that it couldn't have happened 30 seconds after because Baker was in the process of arresting Emilio Santana as photographed in Willis photograph number 10. Mrs. Sanders advised that this morning she called Geraldine Reed, R-E-I-D, another employee, telephone number FE16617, who told her that police officer who had first entered the building ran into the lunchroom where Mr. Truly, the warehouse manager, and Oswald were evidently lunching. Okay, hang on a second. So we have some hearsay. Mrs. Sanders advised that this morning she called Geraldine Reed, another employee, telephone number blah, 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 who told her that the police officer who had first entered the building ran into the lunchroom where Mr. Truly, the warehouse manager, and Oswald were evidently lunching. Okay? And that's completely false, and it's hearsay from a random police officer to Mrs. Sanders to Mrs. Reed to Mrs. Sanders. So here, once again, we have statements that are probably taken as true by some Kennedy researchers, which are clearly hearsay. The police officer put his gun into Oswald's stomach, but Truly advised the police officer that Oswald worked for him. See, this is all bullshit. This is the game of telephone. Police officer turned away and evidently left the area. She said, according to Reed, Oswald then went to the main offices, and Reed, although she had not observed the initial incident with the police officer, told Oswald that the president had been shot. According to Sanders, Mrs. Reed claimed that Oswald just mumbled something and then left the office. She said Reed did not mention how Oswald left the office or For that matter, if she knew how he might have left the building. Sanders advised that the stairwell would probably have been the easiest way to leave without being too noticeable, since the stairwell is in need of repairs and employees had been instructed not to use the stairwell. All right, next we have... See, here's something I need to point out. Like, none of these are witness statements. None of these. These are statements written by FBI agents. At least a day or 2 days after the assassination, right? We can't take any of what's going on in these statements as having happened at face value, because they're being written by fucking FBI agents who are obviously coached. See, here we're about to talk about O.V. Campbell, Otis V. Campbell, who's one of the owners and vice president of the depository. However, this isn't a statement by him. This is a rewriting of a statement by a FBI agent, right? So here we go. FBI investigative report, November 24th, 63. Otis V. Campbell, 7120 Twin Lake Lane, Dallas, Texas, furnished the following information. He is vice president of the Texas Schoolbook Depository Company, with offices located on the second floor of the Texas Schoolbook Depository building in Dallas. On November 22nd, 63, he was present at his office at the above-named building, and at about 12:30 on that day, he and several other associates were together stationed about 30 feet in front of the building, facing away from the building, observing the passing motorcade containing President Kennedy. At this time, he heard a loud report, which at first he considered to be a firecracker or some such object set off by a crank, and believed the noise came from away from his building. This illusion, he explained, may have been due to the sound bouncing off the building and other objects in the vicinity. After hearing two more such reports, he realized that it must have been a rifle shot and President Kennedy's car had advanced just out of his vision. He went forward a few feet to observe this automobile, inasmuch as he feared that the rifle shots were in connection with an attempt upon President Kennedy's life. He then observed the car bearing President Kennedy to slow down a near stop, and a motorcycle policeman rushed up. Immediately following this, he observed the car rush away from the scene. He then immediately rushed into his building without having seen anything unusual from any window of the building. Inside, he was told shortly thereafter by the warehouse superintendent, Mr. Truly, that all the employees of the company had been rounded up and one employee, Lee Harvey Oswald, was missing. Mr. Campbell observed a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald bearing New Orleans, Louisiana, number 112723, and stated that he is sure this is a photograph of the employee named above, but added that he is not personally acquainted with him and has never seen him. Okay? This, to me, is one of the more important statements ever made in the Texas Schoolbook Depository. Mr. Campbell observed a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald bearing New Orleans, Louisiana, number 112723, and stated that he is sure this is a photograph of the employee named above, but added he's not personally acquainted with him and has never seen him. How the fuck does the guy who works on the second floor, who's worked in the building for almost 2 months with this guy, never seen him? Because I don't think O.V. Campbell was involved in any of this shit. He's a fucking lughead. His partner, Castor, was involved with this, who left by 12:10, who you're not going to find a statement from, ever. And Mr. Campbell observed a photograph. He says that he didn't ever know him because he never saw him, because the person he did see working there was William Seymour, not Oswald. He advised that he's always given Mr. Truly the responsibility of hiring employees for the warehouse. So Mr. Truly hired him, right? But Mr. Truly, here's the thing with Mr. Truly. His first cousin, his wife is married to he's married to his wife. His wife is the first cousin of Fred Korth, right? Secretary of the Navy. And so there's some weird shit going on there. And then when they ask Roy Truly for Oswald's address, he gives them two addresses, the Elspeth address, and he gives them the address in Irving at the Paynes, but he never gives them the address of the boarding house because he never had it. But then mysteriously, the cops show up at the boarding house, right? Total bullshit. Let me read this one more time. Mr. Campbell observed a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald bearing New Orleans, Louisiana, number blah, 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 and stated that he is sure this is a photograph of the employee named above, but added he's not personally acquainted with him and has never seen him. I think it's one of the more important statements you're ever going to see. Here's another statement, FBI agent. Okay, so none of these are statements. These are reports written by FBI agents. This one is written by FBI agent Nat A. Pinkston, dated November 25th, 63. Mr. H.S. Eichen, A-I-K-E-N, Another name I've never heard of before. Bookkeeper, Texas School Book Depository, at the instruction of Mr. Roy Truly, made official the official payroll records for the Texas School Book Depository, which records specifically covered employment of Lee Harvey Oswald. These records reflected that Oswald first worked for this company on October 16, 1963, and worked continuously at 8 hours per day from October 16th through November 22nd, 63, without missing any day's work. During this period of time, he was off only on Saturdays and Sundays, and November 11th, 1963, which was a company holiday. Verifax copies were made of these payroll records and are being retained in the files of the Dallas Division. Once again, that's from Special Agent Nat A. Pinkston, and he got those from Mrs. H.S. Aiken, A-I-K-E-N, bookkeeper, Texas School Book Depository. But remember, I've never seen a statement or heard of Mrs. Aiken. A lot of these statements in this file on Roy Truly are purely FBI files, that not Garrison files, and they're not statements. They are reports written by the FBI agents to not include the statements. Very suspect. Very suspect. Here's another one. Mrs. Bonnie Ritchie, secretary to Roy Truly, warehouse manager, Texas School Depository, 411 Elm Street, Dallas, advised that all warehouse employees of the Texas School Depository receive their weekly pay in cash. No checks are written to these warehouse employees. Interesting. And this will be the last one for today. We're going to wrap it up here. We'll pick this up tomorrow. We're on page 30 of 116. O.V. Campbell, Vice President, Texas School Book Depository, Elman Houston Streets, Dallas, Texas, furnished following information. Lee Harvey Oswald, while employed at the Texas School Book Depository from October 16th to November 22nd, 1963, was paid semi-monthly in cash. He received two payments of $104.41 each on October 31st, 1963 and November 15th, 1963. In addition, he now has paid due of him of $43.37, which is unclaimed. And that was written by Special Agent Bardwell Odom. Bardwell Odom pops up in the Magic Bullet story. And, okay, I said last one, but this is really going to be the last one. This is a supplement written by Nat Pinkston. And it says, Detective Baker, Homicide and Robbery Bureau, Dallas Police Department, advised that a Dallas Police Department motorcycle patrolman who first entered the Texas School Depository building with Mr. Roy Truly and who observed Lee Harvey Oswald in the company snack bar on the second floor of that building immediately after shooting the president was Patrolman Marion L. Baker. Yes, and we've already looked at the handwritten statements of Marion Baker, which I have right here, where it clearly says, I followed the man to the rear of the building, and he said, let's take the elevator. The elevator was hung several floors up, so we used the stairs instead. And as we reached the third or fourth floor, I saw a man walking away from the stairway. I called to the man, and he turned around and come back towards me. The manager said that he knows this man, he works here. I then turned the man loose and went up to the top floor. Okay, so the idea that the lunchroom second floor story with a Coke ever happened is complete fiction, and is completely debunked here by the statement of Marion Baker. And it will also be reiterated by Jesse Curry, that this is what Baker did, and that in Curry's affidavit, it clearly states that the man they're talking about, Lee Oswald, is the man who was stopped on the third or fourth floor. Okay, so the whole story about the second floor lunchroom and a Coke is complete fiction, and yeah, that's it. It's bullshit. It never happened. It's more proof that the entire story of the Kennedy assassination is complete bullshit. So, all right, guys, that's it for today. Remember, this evening, you're going to get the first episode of Bloody History, World War II, and it's going to be on Substack. I'm going to record it in the next hour or two, and it will be up tonight. So you can pretty much plan on those coming in the evening, every evening. You should get it by 7, 8 o'clock Eastern time. So, but that's going to do it for me, guys. Please tune in to Bloody History, World War II on Substack, and if not, I will see you guys tomorrow.